Is there any questions? So when I applied, they were taking 2 graduates. So they were only taking a marketing graduate and a finance graduate. So I was like, okay, cool, I studied finance. Like, I'm gonna apply for this finance role. Now I looked into Heineken, I was like, man, these guys sponsor like the Rugby World Cup and the UEFA Champions League. Like, they do some cool sponsorship stuff. Like, might throw my hat in for marketing. And to answer your question, my application literally went 1/2 marketing, 1/2 finance. And the marketing one said, I've got no tertiary experience in this field, but here's the stuff I've done on UCSA. You know, like, we created Mardi Gras, we made Once Upon a Time. I had this Facebook page about a crane that went around for a few years. Like, started that in my 3rd year. I had a free food page that I started. Did all this weird, wacky kind of, it sounded almost like a joke, but I was like, genuinely, I know how to kind of sell something or like market something. And then the finance one, I was able to talk about University of Canterbury, talk about the financial modelling internships they make you go through as some of your papers, and talk about the experience you actually get from university. But then everything I've talked about came into fruition was I went through all this big process, and it was actually when we were in China, Angus, I don't know if you remember this, but I was actually going through the application process. And I was doing these personality tests from the university and all these like video interviews and that kind of thing. But then I got invited to an assessment centre, and so basically they fly up to Auckland, they fly all these prospective graduates from like New Caledonia and Vietnam and Singapore, and you're all in this room having to kind of like win these spots on this graduate program. And one of the things was we sat around a board table, and it just said, they said, okay, boardroom scenario, you're all directors of Heineken, news piece has just come out, beer gives everyone cancer, what do you think? And I was just like, oh, I don't know much about beer because I drink diesel, and I definitely don't know much about cancer. But I was actually able to get myself through that scenario because of the experience I'd had on clubs. You know, you sit there on the UCSA for 2 hours every fortnight and actually talk in a boardroom scenario. So I was actually able to leverage that during the application process. So there's all these weird things that I'd learned at uni that started to come to fruition during the process. If you remember back to the start, I said people often do these in silos. And I think, you know, I think it's obvious I'm an extrovert, like I'm very outgoing and that kind of thing, and I can play on that. Some people aren't. So the guy they actually hired in the other graduate role that went with me, he's very introverted. He's actually a very good friend of mine, but he was actually from UC too, but he's an introvert and he openly admits it. And he actually said to me, when we first started working, he's like, when I was at uni, I wish I got more involved in this. He did this, and he did this, but he didn't do this. And he said he really struggles now. Well, not struggles, but it's something he's really been pushing. Like, he tries to get himself on all these committees at work and that kind of thing. So if you are like that, it potentially will be uncomfortable to put yourself forward. But I think it's really important to balance out these 3 things to go and do that. And if you aren't willing to put yourself and put your hand up, there's, you know, clubs and societies or things you can be a part of at uni that don't require you to be in the limelight. Like, you can easily, I guarantee, sorry to use your software engineering again, but if there's like a software group at the university that might have 15 people, you know, chances are they'll be very similar to you. And double the chances is you're going to get all of that project management experience, meeting deadlines, execution of things the exact same way. But you're just doing something different that's not as in your face as potentially something else. If you haven't had those opportunities beforehand, you get thrown in there. I think the cultural differences can often be massive. And building rapport and relationships with people around you plays a massive, massive part. So something I didn't actually give enough weight to when I first went to Japan, I struggled because most of the office couldn't really speak English. It was all just Japanese. And can you speak Japanese? Yeah, so you're probably like me. I knew konnichiwa, that was it. Now I can order food and that kind of thing. But there's all these language barriers and cultural barriers. You really have to spend a couple of months actually just getting to know them. And in New Zealand, we tend to be quite outgoing and all this innovative stuff. But we do actually just, for a couple of weeks, just need to pull back, get to know who's actually around us, who's actually around us, you know, what are the levers in their culture that I can play to. In Japan, they're very polite, but there's actually so many layers to them. And once you actually get to know them, you can actually start to have these in-depth conversations. So it's building relationships and rapport for sure.